Okay. So some of the very important component in the electrons, especially in scanning electron microscopy, is actually electron gun, but that is common for transmission electron microscopy as well as for scanning electron microscopy. So there are two variants of electron microscope. Some of the students may be aware of. We call conventional scanning electron microscope, which works based on a thermionic emission principle, which we'll discuss today. And last 15 years, we start using. Means it's not. It is actually there in the market. Field emission gun scanning electron microscopy. This has a better resolution nowadays. With a lot of work is going on around in the world in the area of nanotechnology. So these microscopes are actually having a resolution we can go up to 10 nanometer. In fact, its theoretical resolution is we can go up to 2 nanometer. But in practical sense, we can go up to 10 nanometer or 15 nanometer, depending on the sample surfaces and again the roughness, what kind of sample preparation we have, we can actually see this kind of images. So that works based on the field emission gun principle. The field emission gun principle is something very similar to what we use in a scanning tunneling microscope, which also we'll discuss a little bit in this course, little bit later. But again, the tunneling effect that we will discuss in today's class. So again, in the field emission gun itself, we have a two variant. We have a Scotty field emission gun and we have a cold field emission gun. We'll start with the cold field emission gun, then we'll try to understand what is Scotty field emission gun. These are the things that we will discuss. And again, now with these different kind of variants in scanning electron microscopy, how it is going to have an impact on the final image in terms of crossover, vacuum level required, and the lifetime of the gun, all those things that we will discuss in this particular class. So possible we'll discuss about little bit about the lenses, and there is a, see, whenever you have a electron beam hits the sample, there is a we call specimen electron interaction. If possible, if time permits, we'll start that part also. Okay, so this is the overall structure of today's class. Okay, let me brush on the screen. So you can see the screen now.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
So this is about the scanning electron microscope, which we already have discussed earlier also. This is something we are going to discuss in detail in today's class. We will discuss about the electron gun, which is actually very, very important component that decides what is the kind of microscope that we are going to have. So as I told earlier, there is a two school of thought. One is actually the thermionic emission, another is field emission. Okay, so then we have this anode. We will also discuss the role of this anode. What is the role of this anode? In fact, we will see slightly a different one, and we'll call Bennett's cylinder. Okay, we'll look at that. Today we'll also look at these magnetic lenses. As I told you earlier, similar to optical, we have lenses, but these lenses are actually magnetic lenses. The role of magnetic lenses is actually focus the beam, means converge it, and you diverge it, and this is for one is actually converging, then diverging the beam wherever is required, then obtain focus, then change magnification. So these are some of the tasks for this, the magnetic lens. It's not that lens does one purpose simply to magnify it or like focus it. It's like it has a several purpose maybe the purpose of lens we'll discuss in detail in the TEM, but just brief about the magnetic lens in this particular class. Okay, then we have a scanning coil. This is actually very important in term component which we don't see in the TEM scanning coils. But anyhow, we'll not get into the detail. But it's basically once the focus beam that you are moving across these. Like suppose this is your sample surface. Let's say this is your sample surface. So it will be like it will take the entire region into small packets. Then it will actually scan across the region. So that's what we do in the scanning electron microscope. Okay, if you use the machine, then you'll come to know that you can actually have a different speed. If you want to get a very high, better resolution image, means in a sense the scanning will be done very slowly. So that means it's basically you are doing it's like a pixel. So you are doing a scanning at large number of points. You're taking a more number of data points. So the generally screen will move like this, slowly it will move like this. So that's what we do. We are doing it. We'll see what is actually that we are doing with the scanning coil and how it is actually allowing us to do this particular secondary electron image that we will discuss maybe in the next class. Okay. So also we have a backscatter electron detector. These are very common detectors in the scanning electron microscope, but very commonly what we use is this particular detector, and this particular mode of imaging is something that we use scanning electron. That's why we call secondary electron. So this is actually the mode we use very regularly for taking image. In addition to that, there are several modes are there. One is actually backscatter electron. Another one is we'll discuss a little bit about the in-lens detector. So apart from that, we have EDS detector. This is actually the EDS detector. So there are then you have a you can use a instead of EDS you can use a WDS that required a different setup that we will discuss in detail once we get into the chemical analysis portion. And we also have inside you can insert a EBSD detector. So this is will give you a structural information also. So everything can be you can actually insert it in a single scanning electron microscope. In addition to that, you can actually also use a cathode illuminations. Okay, so these are today's class will concentrate on this particular aspect, the electron gun and the magnetic lens. If time permits, we'll get into the electron specimen interaction. Okay, that's a very important part that we should need to. If you can understand this part clearly, then you can understand about many practical aspect of the scanning electron microscope. Okay, as I told you earlier, we have two different microscope: conventional SCM, which works based on the thermionic emission. So these two microscope, let's say you have these are tungsten hairpin filament and LAB6 filament. In both the cases, we use a thermionic emission. Okay. Then there is another filament. You can see this is actually again a tungsten filament, but the shape This is also tungsten hairpin filament. This is actually a field emission tip. You can see this. These tips are actually a very sharp projections are there on the bottom. So this one we call the FPG tip, field emission gun tip. This is also made of tungsten. We will see what is the difference and why we have this difference. So all those things that we will discuss a little bit. Okay. So the purpose of this filament is basically, see, in electron microscope, what is actually the source for imaging purpose? So in light microscope, we have a light as a source for imaging purpose. In electron microscope, we have electron. So these electrons are generated from this filament. Okay. So the electron will come out of this filament. Okay. So when electron can come out from your sample, it's decided by the work function. So first you should need to understand what is the meaning of work function. Every material has certain work function. If you take tungsten, it has a certain work function. You take LaB6, it has certain work function. If you take aluminum, it has certain work function. If you take copper, it has certain work function. That means the energy required to overcome, the work function is something that energy required to overcome the barrier created in a material for the electron to come out. Means suppose you have a, let's say this is your filament. Now what you are going to do is somehow you have to say that you have to have an electron source. Electron source means the electron should come out of the sample. It's not that electron can automatically come out of the sample. We'll discuss a little bit in the next slide. That means we have to give certain energy to the system so that electron can come out of that particular surface. Means let's say in the electron, from the electron gun we have to remove, means by some means we're going to create a bring the electron out from that particular electron gun. So first let us but that it can be done by three methods. One is by thermal. So that is what we call thermionic emission. Again, that can be done by electric field. That's what we call field emission principle. And again, that can be done using photo, using light. So that's where we talk about photo emission. Anyhow, this photo emission is something that we will discuss in detail in the X-ray photoelectron spectroscopy. We call XPS. So the fundamental principle is actually the work function is which is common. The way that we actually take out the electron are different in each different method. Especially in SEM, we do use these two mechanism by which we actually take out the electron from the electron gun. So before that, let us try to understand what is work function. So anyone has any idea what is work function? What is work function? Have you ever heard about this term work function?
Yes, sir.
Minimum energy required to eject electrons from filaments.
Eject electron from
Filaments, sir.
filament. My question is it simply that ejecting electron from the outer cell orbital? Is it equivalent to the electron removed from outer cell orbital or something else?
Something else, sir.
Okay. Okay. So it's not, see, generally we think that work function means, let me just explain it so that you can understand. Okay. See, let's say that this is your sample. Okay. Let us assume that it's a metallic sample that you have. Okay, every sample is going to have atom. Okay, this is your nucleus. Then you have electron. Let's say this is your electron. This is your electron. These are your outer cell electrons. Okay. Similarly, that you're going to have another atom. Then you have electron. Electron. Okay. Now, let's say that you remove, let's say these are, see, if you look at, means we all know that outer cell electrons are the one which is easily, you can actually remove it from any atom. Because which is actually has a lower binding energy with compared to the any other. Let's say you take, this is one cell, this is another cell, this is another cell. Let's say you have so many levels. So these electrons are actually close to your nucleus, so it is going to have a higher binding energy. So let's say this is cell 1, 2, 3, 4. Now if you look at energy of cell 1 is going to be more than the 2, 3 and 4. So these outer cell electrons are actually loosely bound because it is away from the nucleus. So it is if at all, if you can remove electron, this is possible by it is actually possible by removing the one of the outer cell electron. Okay. So that's what happened in metallic bonds. You have outer cell electron. It can actually form a electron C. Okay. So the moment you remove an electron, what happens to this atom? That means it will become ion of positive, isn't it? Because you are removing an electron, that means it become positive ion. Okay. But see, as a material, it will not become a positive as a whole, because this electron will go and sit some other, maybe suppose you have a vacancy here in the outer cell orbital, then it will go and sit. That means what I'm trying to bring out here is, by removing just an electron from the outer cell orbital is it's not the work function. Not work function, because this electron can go and sit in some other atom, because the system would like to, as a material, it doesn't want to get ionized. That means it doesn't want to change to, because this is neutral. At this point, it is actually a neutral. It doesn't want to get ionized, either a positive or negative. It doesn't want to get ionized. So that way, the moment you remove electron also, it will not come out. It will go some other. It will go to some other atom and it will join in that orbital. So that way this electron, whatever that actually which is coming out of those outer shell orbital, it is not going to come out of the material. Okay. Okay. Now fine. Suppose you give some energy. Suppose if you give some energy, then this electron can come out. Okay. Let's say that. Okay, let's assume that this electron comes out. By giving some energy, this electron is coming out. Now, what does it mean actually? Say this entire material become ionized into plus positive, isn't it? If you remove one electron, so first what we did is actually we removed one electron from an atom, means from the atom, from the outer shell orbital. This electron came, but this can actually join on the some other atom. That's fine, because what is as a net, what is happening is it's going from one atom to another atom, but that atom is getting positive, ionized into positive, but another atom is getting, if you add one more electron here, it will get ionized into negative. But still, the entire system, if you look at as a system, it is not actually getting ionized. Okay. But now what we are doing is we are giving some energy to the system such that it is coming out of the, it is coming out from the sample surface. That means the entire system now it has some positive ionized into positive energy, means it become a positive ions. So now the positive ion can actually pull this, means it's getting, these electrons are attracted by this positive ion. So again, it will not escape until and unless you give sufficient energy to overcome this force also. That is what we call, as a total we call is a work function. Work function means, first thing is you have to remove an electron from the outer shell orbital. Okay, work function is actually the one is removing electron from outer shell orbital. Then you give some energy, remove from the surface. Then you have to overcome the positive and negative and positive charge. We call Coulomb force. So it has to do all the it has to overcome all these three barriers. These are the barriers. So first is, it's not that simply you cannot actually remove an electron from the outer shell. It requires some energy. Another thing is, though it is actually coming out of outer shell electron, but it can go to the another atom. So that means to remove electron from the sample surface, you need some energy. That's the. But again, if it comes out also, this entire system become positive. So again, it can pull the electron inside. Okay, so that means you have to overcome this Coulomb force. That also you need to overcome. That is what the entire process we call is a work function. Okay, so this can be done by two methods. One is actually three methods, which already we discussed. The one method is actually we are using a thermal energy. By giving thermal energy, you are increasing the kinetic energy of the electron. Once you increase the kinetic energy of electron, that means by using kinetic energy, it is going to overcome the work function. The thing is, first thing is, it will remove the electron from the outer shell orbital. Then it will allow this kinetic energy will allow this electron to come out. Again, it will come out from this tip by overcome this positive and negatively charged material. So this is what we call thermionic emission. By applying a thermal energy, if we can pull electron from a electron gun, we call thermionic emission. Okay. Suppose if we do the same process by creating a, let's say that you have an electron gun, then you connect it with the positive, let's say positive and the negative, positive and the negative charge. By giving a charge, so what it can do is, if at all electron is there, so this will actually push the electron so that this electron can come out. It can join on this particular path. So by giving an electric field also, you can actually overcome this entire process by giving a, but that is not that easy. So it's not that easy. That is one of the reason why we have a sharp tip that we will discuss. If it is a very blunt tip, it is not going to happen. If it is a blunt tip, even you give positive and the negative, it is not going to pull an electron from this particular material. That for that purpose, you have to give very large energy, which is difficult to do it. In that case, the filament will burn. So the why we have a sharp tip that we will discuss, but the sharp tip is very, very important to pull electron when you give a electric field. So when you pull electron using electric field, basically the mechanism what we call is a tunneling effect. So whenever you have a based on applying electric field, using a tunneling effect, if you can pull electron, that is what we call field emission. Okay. So if you have any doubt, you can ask me now, and I'll go to the next part. Any doubt? Okay, if there are no doubt, then I'll go to the next part. Okay. Okay, so now this particular thermionic emitters, in thermionic emitters, you're going to have this kind of a filament. Okay, it may not be like this. It will be like this. This is actually the pin type filament. Okay. So when you heat this filament, it boils electrons over the top of the barrel. Let's say this is your conduction band, this is your vacuum level, and you have to overcome. See, basically from Fermi level, it has to come out. That is what we talk about. So it has to come out. Basically, you have a work function that you have to overcome. Okay. So the advantage is that in this case is actually we use two different filament type. One is actually a tungsten pin type filament. Another one is La-B6 filament. We'll say that what is the difference between these two filament. And generally we prefer, see, most of the SCM, maybe not most of the SCM. Now let's see, let me just historically, if we can talk about early days, we had a tungsten pin filament. Okay. Now then people have moved to La-B6 filament. But if you ask me, if you look at TEM, many conventional TEMs are still using La-B6 filament. Okay. That is what we call conventional electron transmission electron microscopy. But most of the SEM, we use tungsten pin filament. The machine what we have in our central facility is that it's a conventional SEM with a tungsten pin filament. The one advantage is that these filaments are like whatever we use in a normal tube-light bulb. It's a tungsten filament, so it's a very cheap, very easily you can get. But the thing is, again, you don't need a significant vacuum level is required. This is one of the very important criteria for maintaining the maintenance of SEM. See, this maintenance cost of any machine actually completely depends on the kind of vacuum level required in a system. So if you use a simple tungsten filament, you don't need a large vacuum level. We'll see how much difference that we will get in terms of vacuum level for a different kind of a machine. But if you use a LAB6 filament, but see, one more thing that the disadvantage I did not discuss here is that when you use tungsten filament, every week that you have to, means it can work 50 to 100 hours. Okay, in general, you may require to change the filament every week once. But again, the another problem is that when you actually see any filament, you set some parameter. Let's say that the day one has some sort of a shape. This is the shape of the filament. Let's say that. Okay. Maybe after day two, what can happen is the filament can blunt. Okay. It can blunt. Let's say, let me just write it. It can blunt like this because of sputtering. Because continuously you are removing electron, it can actually go to a wear and tear. So the parameter, whatever you set on the day one, it need not to work on the second or third day. That's the most important thing that one should need to remember. There is nothing called perfect operating parameters in a SEM. Again, whatever optimum parameter that you optimize today need not to be the same on tomorrow also. That's the first thing you should, because that may be true if you use a LAB6 filament, because the life of LAB6 filament is somewhere in the range of 1.5 to 2 years. Okay, it is not going to degrade significantly as a function of time. So on the other hand, this tungsten pin filament, you have to replace it every 50 to 100 hours, depending on the level of brightness we use, depending on the probe current that we apply. This particular time limit actually varies, but in general, we may require to change the filament after every 6 or 7 days of continuous operation. So that is the reason whenever you don't use it, you switch off the filament. Because filament is something which is actually a consumable, it will actually, you have to replace it. So other than that, machine you need not to switch off in SEM, because if you switch off, you are actually, means you are venting the air inside, that can actually contaminate the scanning electron microscope. It's better you switch on the machine, you switch off the filament. It's not that you have to completely switch off, means it is better always switch on the machine, don't switch off the filament. That's the best way of doing using any electron microscope. But if you actually switch off completely the electron microscope, what is going to happen is it is going to affect the vacuum level. But especially for a microscope like LAB6 filament or field emission gun, don't switch off a scanning electron microscopy or transmission electron microscope. Only switch off the filament. This is practically that you should need to understand the way it works. Filament is the one which is actually getting consumed, that you can switch off. The other parts are vacuum level, which you, as long as you maintain a vacuum level, the system is going to work much better. So to maintain a vacuum level, you have to switch on the machine, but you should switch on the filament. Okay. So now we'll look at what is actually the difference between a tungsten filament and LAB6 filament in the next slide. Okay. Let me just go to the table so that I can give you a better idea here. Now let us look at this is your tungsten fin filament, and this is a LAB6 filament. Okay. As I told you, the work function is which is actually is a very important criteria. Work function of tungsten is each material has certain work function. Work function of tungsten is pretty high. It is around 4.5. On the other hand, LAB6 has a work function of only 2.4. So it is only 2.4. So in that case, let's say that your operating temperature, suppose you use tungsten filament, your operating temperature is 2700 K. On the other hand, for LAB6, your operating temperature is only 1700. Now you can see higher the work function, higher is the operating temperature. That means you have to heat the filament very high temperatures to extract the electron from the filament. Okay. Again, higher the temperature heated, the life is going to be poor. If you look at, as I told you earlier, the life of the tungsten filament is only 100 hours. So it can be 50 to 100 hours. On the other hand, it is 1000 hours. So you are heating a lower temperature, and it can actually work at for a very longer duration. Okay. So another thing that I told you is a vacuum level. Now you look at this vacuum level. So this is in a Pascal. It is 10 power minus 2 Pascal is required for operating the tungsten filament. On the other hand, you have to go very high, I mean slightly, at least 2 order, like 10 power minus 4 vacuum level is required to work for this lanthanum hexaborate filament. Okay. So, but still people prefer to use this filament. Another important aspect is that you look at this particular point, the crossover. We will see what is crossover a little bit, maybe in this class itself, what is crossover. So this is actually the, let's say that you have a, let's say that you have a, this is your sample. Okay. Now you have a two different pen with one is having, this is actually its okay, one is having, this is its tip diameter. Okay. So another one is having this tip diameter. Okay. Now you want to write as much as possible, which you can you should distinguish in this particular regime. Which one will use? Let's say you use, let's say 1, this is 2. Which one will use?
2, sir.
2, because 2 has a very small tip, so that you can actually go to so many small locations. So that's what it is, crossover. The crossover decides. This is what we call crossover. Maybe I can show you somewhere here. Yeah. So this is we call gun crossover. Okay. The gun crossover is something which is very important. Generally, the gun crossover may be in the 10 times of the tip diameter. Generally, but that can vary depending on the your Vanel cylinder, magnetic lenses, and all sort of steps. But it's approximately it's a 10 times of your tip diameter. So now, if we look at the tip diameter, this is like this. Another one is like this. So which one will choose? Which one is going to show? Which one is going to have a lower crossover? So LAB6 is having the finer tip diameter. So in that case, you're going to get a lower crossover. The lower is the crossover, better is going to be resolution. But if you look at this crossover now, you can imagine 10 power 5. Now here, if it is cold fade, you see the crossover. It's only 3. It means 5 orders that you are coming on. That is the reason we'll discuss why it is. But the thing is, why we talk about field emission gun has a better, very good resolution is because it has a very, very small crossover. Okay, even Scatterfake also has a very good crossover. This is more than sufficient. Okay, so now one more thing that I would like to emphasize here. Let's say that there are different machines are available in the world, especially in a field emission gun. There is a machine called Carl Zeiss. So as I told you earlier, this is your tip diameter, means your crossover size is almost 10 times of your tip diameter. Carl Zeiss has a, maybe you can also go through in the net, there is a, they call Gemini column. So in this Gemini column, you don't need a it doesn't have any crossover. Okay, the crossover means something that beam actually converge and it actually diverge. But they have made a special column which is a patented process. So you don't have any crossover. So that is the reason if you look at any microscope, field emission gun microscope, you compare with any field emission gun, microscope with the Carl Zeiss machine with any other microscope, Carl Zeiss is going to give a better resolution compared to any other field emission gun microscope. It's mainly because it has a Gemini column. In the Gemini column, you don't have any crossover. That's a very important point in terms of while procuring machine. So that's a very important thing that you should need to understand, because cost-wise, more or less everything's same, but this particular microscope will give you the best possible resolution for a particular operating parameter. Other microscope has its own advantage. I'm not saying that what is best. I'm not claiming that, but this particular technological point of view, this has doesn't have any crossover. So that's another advantage that we have in this Carl Zeiss. In fact, what we have in our college is a Carl Zeiss tungsten filament equipment that doesn't has a crossover, because the technology they don't use it in the conventional ACM. They use the particular technology only in the field emission gun SCM. So now it is clear that tungsten filament required a higher temperature, operating temperature, because it has a higher work function. So on the other hand, you have only 2.7 here. So that way you are actually, you have to operate, instead of this one, you can operate 1700 K for LAB6. Okay. Then the vacuum level. See, vacuum level, why do we need a vacuum level? See, vacuum level is something that to avoid oxidation. See, vacuum level is, if we have higher the vacuum, you are reducing the partial pressure of oxygen inside inside this particular column. So automatically, because any material you heat it, it can get oxidized, because if you have oxygen, it can pick up oxygen when you heat this element. The tungsten doesn't have preference towards oxygen, so you can actually work at lower level, provided your filament tip is not actually very sharp. But on the other hand, if you take field emission gun filament, where you have very sharp tip, and sharp tip can actually get oxidize very easily. That is one of the reasons why you need a very high vacuum level that we will discuss. Okay. So here, as I told you earlier, it works based on a thermodynamic principle. It's a boil off of the electron from the tip of tip. That is what is really happens. So generally electron microscope we work from the 5 kV to 30 kV. So this is what the accelerating voltage we use, but generally we work in the 5 kV to 30 kV. So this is the range we work on the in the ACM. Now let us look at little bit on the other components. What we have here is so this is your electron gun, and let's say that you heat it. Once you heat it, then you start getting a electron coming out. So now there is a bias we call Bernal cylinder. So this is going to give you a negative bias. So what is going to happen is, because this is going to give a negative bias, such in that case, the electron, which is the moment electron come out, it can actually move in all the directions. So what we are doing is we are giving a negative bias here. So by that you are actually converging that electron beam. Then you have a crossover. Okay. Then you have an anode to accelerate the electron, because you have to increase the velocity of the electron, because you have to pull the electron and so that it can hit the sample and it can interact with the sample. So the role of Bernal cylinder is to basically to give a negative bias, and that will actually make you to converge the electron beam at the crossover. Then once you have again it can actually it can move in all the directions. That's the reason you have so many magnetic lenses. Magnetic lenses can converge and diverge. So that's what the magnetic lenses that we will discuss. So these are some of the important components that we have in the conventional electron microscope. So now let us come to the point where we talk about the field emission gun. So as I told you earlier, we have a field emission gun. We don't actually heat sample. So it means, in fact, we don't need to heat sample. That's what, without heating, if we can pull electron, let's say this is your tungsten. So this is your tungsten tip. Maybe you can see in the next one pretty clearly. So this is your tungsten. Tungsten tip. Maybe a better image. Yeah, it will be like this. So this is actually the your tip. This is actually a tungsten tip. It is welded on the electrode. So this is actually welded here. Okay. So this is welded here. Now this is actually the filament that we are talking about. It is welded in this region here. Now you give a power supply voltage here. So now we are supplying a electric, positive and negative. So what is going to happen is there will be a tunneling current. Let's say you give a, let's say that this is negative, this is positive. So then it can actually pull electron, means electron can come out, means electron will come out and it will actually concentrated on the tip surfaces. Okay. So what is going to happen is the SAR point. The SAR point is the one which actually allows you to concentrate all the electron at one particular place. So what happens is the energy barrier will narrow down. Okay. So this is what we will see. When you have this point is very close, then you can actually see the electron can come out of this particular tip. So when you go this positive bias, it's very close, then automatically electron can come out of by tunneling effect. So what is the difference? What we are doing is we are not heating heating the filament here. Instead of heating the filament, what we are doing is we are giving a power supply. But not only we are giving power supply, what we are doing is we are having a tip which actually has a very sharp. That's the why we need sharp tip is basically it will allow the electron to concentrate on certain location. So once it comes to that location, so it's easy to pull electron because it will get charged in these corners are charged. So then pulling the electron is easy by having the this R, the D, this is we call the distance. The distance is pretty when you come closer, automatically you can pull the electron. This is what we call tunneling effect. Maybe I have an equation. Maybe we'll discuss this tunneling effect in detail when we discuss about the scanning tunneling microscopy, STM. We'll discuss a little bit detail about this particular tunneling effect. So the electric field at the tip is very strong. That is what I said. See, you can see here. Okay. So now this is actually a tip of a needle is very sharp. This could be in the range of around 100 to 1000 Armstrong. That means 10 to 100 nanometer. So tip diameter. How do we create? By doing electrochemical etching. These tips are created using electrochemical etching. Okay, so the reason one advantage is that you have a tip which is sharp. When you have sharp tip, your crossover size is also lower. That's the main advantage that we are getting. Again, by having a sharp tip, you are concentrating electron at a that means its electric field will be very strong at the tip. So that just giving a positive bias, you can pull the electron giving a positive bias, which is if it is very close, you will through tunneling current, you can actually pull it. For this to happen, you need to have a very ultra high level of vacuum. Because if you don't have vacuum, if let's say the surface is having some amount of oxides are formed, some amount of absorbed gases or something is having some contamination is there on the surface, then automatically the pulling of electron is not that easy. So that is the reason you're going to have a very high level of vacuum when you use the field emission gun scanning electron microscope. Okay, I'll stop here. We will continue this part in the next class. So already we have 10:50. If you have any questions, you can ask me. Any questions?